Good morning. Welcome to the Career Cafe podcast brought to you by Taylion High Desert Academy. My name is Ashley.
And I'm Hannah.
Our guest for this podcast today is our principal of Taylion High Desert Academy, Miss Sandoval. Good morning. Our first question of the day is, so tell us about yourself.
My name is Evelyn Sandoval. I'm obviously the principal here at Taylion High Desert Academy. I'm a first-generation college student with my parents being born and raised in Mexico. I was born in Riverside and I've lived in the Inland Empire my entire life. I actually became interested in education when I was in high school because I was an avid student. I was never a straight A student, but I'm what people would call tenacious, so I'm kind of consider myself a very hard worker. So even though I was kind of average as far as like my grades and everything else, A's, B's, and C's, I always had a fascination for school and education.
Our next question is, how did you get into education?
Well, like I mentioned before, I was really interested in education. I was actually a tutor right after high school. So instead of kind of working at a restaurant, or working at a fast food place, I ended up getting a job as a tutor. So I was a tutor for several years, and that's where I discovered that I was really interested in teaching. I initially didn't want to be a teacher. So everyone would tell me that I would be a good one because I was always helping people out, but I refused to listen to what people wanted me. So initially I wanted to be in public relations, which is very funny because I'm kind of shy. So that obviously did not work. But when I was in school, in college, my first 2 years, I ended up switching my major. I became a sub, and then I went into my teaching credential program. I became a teacher, and then I later on became a principal.
That's really cool. Oh, what was your favorite subject in school and why?
So my favorite subject was history, which was pretty interesting because I have a problem with dates. And I think that I find it really fascinating kind of to know about the history of where we come from, what we've done in the past, and kind of that idea of not making the same mistakes twice. And if we do, how have they been fixed before so we can not make it again? And it's very interesting because my son is 5, and his favorite subject is history as well.
Oh, really?
And when I got my credential, I got it in English, which was completely different from history. And the only reason was because I couldn't memorize dates and people's names. Like, I have a hard time memorizing it, but I think history has always been my favorite subject.
But you knew, like, when you would read their past and what they had done, you knew about them, but you just would forget their names.
I would forget the details.
Yeah, and that was probably the most important part of what you had to learn. That's why you majored in English instead.
Yes, I did. Because I've always been fascinated with the stories behind the people, not necessarily like when they were born and when they died. I like the story of who they were, how they became who they ended up becoming, and more along like their journey versus just like the dates. And in school, it was always about the dates. Memorize their names, memorize the dates, memorize like the important things in specific time frames. And I always had a hard time. It was more about overall knowing the person's journey than learning about those specific details.
Yeah, because that's way into going into deep into around what time they started doing what they were famous for.
Exactly.
It would be hard because if you like to learn about what people in the past have done, it would be hard for all the dates to learn what dates, when, how, and that'd be really difficult.
Yes,
well, history, I like history better than math. Personally, math is really difficult, but if you liked math,
it would have been easier to memorize the numbers. And it's funny that you mentioned that because I strongly dislike math as well. So that's probably
very
why
common,
I had such a hard time with the dates and stuff like that. But and I think history and English had kind of the same idea. I think at the end of the day, I ended up going the English route because, again, I was interested in the stories and the storytelling. And it's funny because, like I mentioned earlier on, I'm a first-generation college student. So my first language was not English. I learned Spanish. And I spoke Spanish probably all through maybe middle school, and I didn't really learn English until I was almost already in high school. So it became very difficult.
Yeah.
And even then, English became my major.
Yeah, that's how I grew up too, but it was obviously an earlier age, but yeah, that's how I grew up, somewhere around there.
What motivates and inspires you?
I think by far it's my family. Like I mentioned, I am married. I have a son. He's 5 years old. I think that's my biggest inspiration. I think leaving a legacy behind for him, something that he feels proud of. I've never considered myself a very, very, not intelligent, but a very, a lot of people just have a lot of book smarts, and they know how to do school very well. It's always taken me a hard time. I've always been kind of like average. My grades have always been average. I always have been. And I remember always feeling that pressure, like you had to be better, like your grades had to be A's and B's. And I always grew up with that pressure of feeling like I always had to be the best.
So was it something that you wanted, like, I had to, no, it was a pressure from
my parents, from my family. I think I always knew that I wanted to be successful in some way. I just didn't know what that was going to look like.
Yes.
And in finding my inspiration, it was not only I wanted to make my family proud, and now it's my son. I want him to look at me and say, I'm proud of my mom because of what she does, of who she's helping, and how we've come so far, especially like with Taylion and everything else. So I think my husband, my son, and whether you guys believe it or not, you guys inspire me a lot as well. We have several times when other staff members, we talk about how you guys are the reason that we wake up each and every day. And that alone is inspirational, to know that you guys are setting up your own goals and we're just here to support.
Yeah. That's we look up to like principals and teachers because they're the ones helping us get educated so we can grow up, and maybe one day would like to be a principal just like you. So we look, like, if I want to be a principal, I would look up to you and see like what things you have accomplished, so I can see my way of, because everybody's gonna accomplish things differently. But it's just like it could be harder, easier on others, but it's definitely could be done. If you could do it, then
yes,
obviously it's not impossible.
It's not at all.
Our next question is, what do you like most about your job?
There's a lot of things that I enjoy about my job.
The first thing that comes up in your head.
I think it's giving back. I wake up every day, and for the most part, I'm very happy to come up. I like working with students. I kind of thrive on teamwork. That's how I work best. And in this environment, in such a small school, it's all teamwork. Everything is brainstorming. Whether it's a staff member has an idea and then we find a way to make that better, or you guys have an idea and something sparks and we say, okay, let's talk to the principal. Most times I agree with it, and it's more of, how can we help? How do we blow this up? How do we make it big? How do we make it happen? That's what inspires me, and that's what I really enjoy about my job, because it really is a community. It's not I'm in my office and I'm there for hours. It's the interaction with all the students and the teachers and the parents. That really makes me happy.
That's really cool.
What's the most common barrier you see with students?
I think the most common barrier is they give up on themselves before other people do. We see that especially a lot here at Taylion, and I know we work with a lot of students that we see that happen. We focus on bringing back that kind of motivation, but it's so hard to work with students that have lost that motivation, that have already given up. And I think in an environment like this, that is the hardest thing, because we can try 10 different things, and if the student doesn't want it as bad as we do, we struggle. to help them succeed.
Well, for you, the way you guys look at it, well, I feel like you guys look at it as like, we support you, we can help you, but if you can't help yourself, then there's really
It makes it
more harder.
It makes it difficult. It really does.
What was your plan B if you didn't work at a school?
I didn't have one. I didn't have one. I knew that I wanted to be in education my entire life.
So what was your goal?
It was my goal. Yeah, it was my goal. I don't think I ever imagined being a principal. I thought that I was going to be teaching.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed teaching. And even when I share the story, when I decided to be a teacher, I had to narrow down what I wanted to do because I knew I wanted to teach. I just didn't know what I could teach. I knew I couldn't teach math. I knew I couldn't do science. History was going to be difficult because of, again, memorizing dates and everything, important people. So then I narrowed it down to English. And it was one of the reasons I enjoy storytelling. I struggled so much with it when I was young because English wasn't my first language that it almost made it like a challenge. I struggled, so that was by far the hardest subject that I had. And so the more that I struggled with it, the more I became kind of obsessed with having to get it right and master it. I'm very, how would I describe myself? I'm very dedicated. And so the more that I hear it's going to be difficult, you're going to struggle, the more I do it and the more I push back. And so I didn't have a plan B. It was going to be education and education.
Well, you wanted education field and you wanted to be a teacher. What made you go towards a principal?
When I began teaching, one of the first jobs that I ended up having was teaching at the Taylion in San Bernardino. When we were there, I was teaching for a while, and that's when kind of this opportunity came up to come up here in the high desert and help support. I was teaching there for a little bit, and I was connecting with my students. I really enjoyed my job there. And in that given time, the stars kind of aligned where, for whatever reason, the high desert needed someone to come up and support. I initially came up a couple of years ago now to help as a teacher. So they were down a couple of teachers. I think some teachers were off on medical leave. So I came up to just help. And that was the whole idea. I came up to support because they needed our help. And then what ended up happening is I fell in love with the environment. I fell in love with the students, with the culture, with the team. I meshed really well with the people up here and the staff that was already here. And it was that same idea of being kind of tenacious, of trying to figure out, well, what if I stayed up here? What if I didn't go back to San Bernardino?
That crossed your mind, yeah.
And I spoke to my husband about it, and I said, well, what if I apply for this job? And at the moment, he thought I was crazy. He's like, you don't have a lot of experience, like you're gonna struggle, it's gonna be hard. And even talking to my coworkers, they mentioned like it's going to be very difficult for you to do because your lack of experience, you just know teaching, and it's going to be difficult. But I wanted to try it. I'm like, what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
If I fail, I fail, and if I succeed, well, then we succeed together. And I ended up applying for the position, and I got it. And I got the opportunity to stay, and I have been here since. And now it's going to be, I think, my third year up here. That's
like taking a risk because of others always doubting you or telling you can't do it. You still went ahead and were like, I feel like I can do it. If not, I fail. But if not, I succeed. And for you having that mindset, you succeeded, and look at where you're at now. And not listening to the people telling you can't. It's hard. Obviously, it's going to be hard. But it's like, if you really want to, you can try. It's like, that's an example of having, because you wanted to be a teacher, but instead you went a little higher. Like, that's very exciting.
And it was. And I think we're still learning. We hit so many roadblocks, but we're still learning. I have a fantastic team of teachers, of staff members. I think we make a good, solid group together that I'm very proud of. I'm proud of who we are becoming, of where we're going to go. I'm proud of the students, and I think that shows in kind of all the love that we've given to Taylion, because it's not just me. It's been a group of us that have come together for the same goal, and it makes it very rewarding that all that hard work it's paying off. Definitely.
Yes. What is one of the most inspiring moments during your time at Taylion?
The most inspiring moment, I think, came last year when we went up for our charter renewal.
This was recently.
Yes. So that was a very important meeting for us. As a charter school, we have to go up for renewal every so often to our authorizing district. And last year, we needed to go up in front of our district and present our case, why we belong in this area, why there's a need, and what we're doing that shows that we're successful. And when I first came up, it was so difficult because it was a new location for me. We were rebuilding a program. We were kind of rebranding the program, and we were turning it into something different, you know. Mm-hmm. We were getting the buy-in from the parents and trying to encourage them to participate. And we had tried and worked so hard for 2 years. And when we came down to that specific meeting, it was just the best moment that I have probably lived so far here at Taylion. It was 2 meetings. Our first meeting was a filled room, and we had parents and students and staff members and people from the community that came out to support us. We had students that shared their stories, why they came to Taylion and why they like it here, how they feel successful, how they feel like the teachers care about them, how the staff members care about them. And at that moment, it wasn't about me, it was about what we had created, because we were able to call all of these people and ask them, can you please come and speak on our behalf? And so many people showed up. And at our second meeting, when they had to vote, we ended up receiving a unanimous vote. Every single board member gave us their approval. And that was the best feeling. We left that meeting, and when we were in the parking lot, I cried of joy as I even remember, and I get teary-eyed. I remember just the excitement, you know, knowing that we were doing something good, that we were going to have a school, and that our kids were going to continue to be successful, and that we had such a strong team to be able to provide those that support for our kids. And I think I will never forget that. And I hope that I have so many more experiences like that we have many more meetings where we show up and it's a unanimous vote. I think that's the hope, you know? And I think that led the way for such a successful year that we've had. And I think that moment and that night, it showed not only me, but our teachers, our staff, our team, our parents, that we belong here. And that there's a reason why Taylion exists. And we will continue doing the best that we can to make sure that we provide the best for our kids.
That's very emotional. You can get my glasses a little bit. Thank you for that. That was very emotional. Sorry. What is the 100-digit of pi?
I have no idea. Remember back when I told you that math was in my strong subject? Yeah, it's not. I have no idea, to be honest with you. Not a clue. That was a smooth transition, though. A very emotional question. Good. At least that one made us laugh. No, I really don't know. I really don't.
I don't
Okay.
think I know either.
What do you see Taylion evolving to?
I think the sky's the limit. I think we have accomplished so much, and right now where we stand, we really have the opportunity to grow. We have shown our stakeholders, the people that have our back as far as like our board members, that we belong here. There's a need, and I definitely think that we're going to grow. I think we're started growing already. And I hope that we will have more sites, opportunities in different areas, whether that be continuing to grow our online program, opening up another location here in the high desert, in Adelanto. But I really don't think that, things are going to stay stagnant. I think that we are going to continue to grow, and we're going to continue to be successful and have, our student population be successful.
In this current political environment, what do you see for the future of charter schools?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I believe that we have seen that there is a need for charter schools.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that it's going to necessarily go away. We are slowly starting to realize that there is no one size fits all.
Yes.
One type of school doesn't fit every student. And we have seen that there's a need for schools like Taylion. There's a need for charter schools in different areas of the United States. And I don't think that's going to necessarily change. I think that in the political climate that we have now, what will happen is that when you raise the stakes and you set the standards higher, people tend to rise to the standards. People are not going to want to fail. They're not going to want to let their schools, falter. So with that said, that just means that we're going to have better schools. There's no other way to go.
Yes.
And I truly believe that there's a need for schools like charter schools. And where there's a need, something will always, be in practice. And I think as far as the charter school world, I think things are going to be okay, and we're going to be successful,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to continue having a successful run.
Charter schools are, I know people have like different meanings of charter schools. What is it like in your way charter school means?
A charter school is still, it's a free public
school.
school. But most charter schools, there's so many different types. Different types of charter schools have a different specific kind of different programs that they offer. So Taylion, for example, does independent studies, homeschool, online. But there's so many different charter schools that focus on different things like aerospace and mechanics or the arts.
Yeah.
And so the beauty of having such a diverse group of schools is that if a student is interested in, becoming an actor, they can go to a school that really fosters and teaches them those skills.
That's mainly about.
Exactly.
Yes.
If someone wants to be an astronaut, then there's schools that these students can attend to help them kind of guide them in that direction. And so I think that's kind of the beauty of charter schools. And there is kind of a misconception that they are, again, the one size fits all. But there's so many choices, and I think that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
And they're free, and anyone can apply and try it and see if it works.
Yeah, because I know sometimes you want to study one major and you're sure about what you want, but then there's always that turn of event where you're not sure and you start thinking if you want to keep going or not.
Yeah, and I think especially for our youth now, it's so important to keep options open for that same reason that things sometimes happen. You get a curveball thrown at you, and then you're forced to kind of make a change. And I think schools like Taylion kind of offers that opportunity where you don't miss out on what's happening and the important things like getting your diploma. We provide that support that you need to make sure that you're able to make it through. So even though you can be hit with something that you can't control, that you can still reach your goals.
Yes.
If that's, getting your high school diploma or going to college, there's going to be schools out there that help support that.
Yeah.
For a final question, what advice would you give to someone interested in the education field?
The best advice that I could give is believe that you're going into education for the love of the students and the teaching. Oftentimes, I have seen that people go into education as far as being a teacher because they really, really liked a subject. You know, they really, really love history, and they love the dates, and they love knowing about people. But where they struggle is the day-to-day, you know, working with students and being able to communicate well with them and building relationships where the students feel comfortable and confident, and creating an environment where people feel safe and people can share their opinions.
Yes.
And so it's almost like you have to have a balance. You have to have a love for the subject that you want to teach, but also have a love for teaching. Because a lot of it, especially in a traditional classroom, it's not all about teaching. It's teaching and communication.
Yes.
Not only with the students, but with the parents. And so I think if anyone is thinking about becoming a teacher or being an educator, I think truly believing that that is your calling. And it's as cheesy as that might sound, knowing that that's your calling because that's what you see yourself doing. You know, I think when you go into it thinking that, like, this is what I need to be doing, this is my journey, I like to teach and I like to communicate with others, then you enjoy it so much more.
Yes.
I truly believe that if you go in it thinking, this is going to be easy, or teaching is simple, I'm going to get summers off and weekends off, I think you're going to have a very rude awakening because it really isn't that way.
Yeah.
It's a very difficult job, and it's different once you're in it. So as long as you have the heart for it and the passion for it, I think no matter what happens, you're always going to enjoy it.
Yeah, I feel like for me it's like patience. Like you have to have
Yes.
so much patience.
Yes.
It's not like patience on students, but patient on parents sometimes, and patient on the things you're doing, the surroundings around you. Because I know you're kind of busy all the time, and it's like you have to have the patience and the mentality that you have to, you know, you're doing what you like. Like, it's not really a job for you, it's something you really love.
Exactly. And I think most people, once you really find something that you love, it's not necessarily a job anymore. You know, it's your passion. And you wake up every morning excited to go to work versus dreading to have to get up and get dressed and move on. So I think there's a lot to think about. You know, before it used to be so easy to be a teacher. It's so easy to, and it really, I don't think it is. And I think it takes a lot of heart. And if you have the heart, by all means, go for it. Try it out. Make it work. And again, it does take a lot of patience. It does. And I think you put that perfectly with parents, with students, managing the workload. Yeah. But if you enjoy it, again, it's so inspirational and it's so meaningful that all of that is just secondary. All the, you know, the paperwork and the meetings, everything else is secondary. But I'm so happy to say that I just enjoy my job so much. I can't see myself doing anything else.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Sandoval.
Thank you.
Thank you so
ladies.
much. It was really nice having you. Thank you. I really appreciate all the advice you gave to us. I'm very thankful.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies.